Hey guys, in today's chess video, I'll be teaching you the difference between an opening and a system, and why it's so important, especially if you're a beginner or intermediate player, to pick up a system so that you can increase your rating from here all the way to there extremely quickly. Alright, let's get straight into it. Alright, so first of all, what is an opening? What is a system? What's the difference? Why is it much more important if we're just beginning to learn a system over an opening? Well, an opening is really any set of moves that happen in the opening, right? You could play e4 or c5. That's an opening. It's called a Sicilian defense. And the problem with these openings, especially if you're trying to memorize them, if you're first starting out or just beginning to understand the concepts in chess, is that there's so many different variations that you really have to understand, especially if you're playing on the black side here, the one initiating the opening. When you play pawn c5, you have to get ready for knight c3. You have to get ready for pawn d4. You have to be ready for pawn d3. You have to be ready for pawn f4. Excuse me. You also have to be ready for like knight f3. You have to be ready for really anything. And within each variation, you need to be ready of even more continuations within that. And for somebody who's just starting out, never mind that person, I have a lot of trouble doing this type of stuff. So imagine the difficulties you will be having if you're trying to do all this stuff. So what is a system then? A system is really a set of moves to begin with that you really can play against really anything your opponent does. The most popular system nowadays that are even played in grandmaster levels, which is a little bit boring sometimes, but extremely effective, is the London system. And what is the London system? Well, it really doesn't matter what your opponent does, but you literally just play d4, bishop f4, e3, and your opponent really, as I said before, can do anything. And then eventually you play pawn c3, bishop b7, knight d2, knight f3. So what is the difference between this and the other opening? Well, as you guys can see, well, first of all, this looks like a pretty nice setup. But the other thing that's very important is Black could do whatever he really wants. Like, if instead of pawn d5, let's say he plays pawn e6, you still play bishop f4. If they play knight f6, if they play f5, you still play bishop f4. Your opponent plays b6, you still play bishop f4. Your opponent plays a5, you can play bishop f4. Really against anything your opponent does, as long as it's not super silly. For example, let's say pawn d5 here, and they play queen d6, you're just going to be playing the same thing over and over and over again. Of course, you take the queen there. So the London system, even though it's the most popular one, is not one that I really particularly enjoy or one I recommend for beginner or intermediate players because it requires a lot of positional, mastery in order to make this opening work. On the other hand, the system that I recommend for you guys, especially on the white side, is this system called the Colley system. And again, you don't really care what black does, so just ignore what black's doing. But this system is incredibly strong because you're just putting all your pieces to attack one side of the board. So after pawn b3, let's say castles, bishop b2, pawn c5, knight bd2. I want you to look at this position compared to the previous position, the London system. There's only one major difference, and that's that instead of the bishop here, we use two moves to put it on b2. Now, why do I like this better than bishop on f4? Well, the bishop on f4, even though it's quite open and looks pretty good, it doesn't really go along with the rest of the plan. And in this position, the plan is to go attack the king side. I mean, look at all these pieces. Look at how they can come and attack the opponent's king. In fact, one of the major plans, in fact, one of the only plans people go for in these positions, is to play knight e5. After that, let's say our opponent plays knight bd7, castles, like b6, knight here, bishop b7, is to play this f4 move, right? And now you can put the queen to h3, you can put the rook on f3 to g3, and this thing you can really play against anything. It doesn't matter if the bishop went here or the bishop went there, the knight went here, the knight went there, the bishop went here or the bishop went there, or he went like pawn like e6 or pawn like c6. It really doesn't matter. This opening's strong no matter what your opponent plays, which is the point of the system in general. One of my best memories of using this opening was when I was like maybe around 2000, 2100, and I played against a FIDE master or international master at the time, I forgot. Well, I played this opening, had so much time at the end of the game, I got a draw easy peasy lemon squeezy against somebody so much higher rated, so much more experienced, and after the game he got so frustrated, he was telling his friends, oh, there was nothing I can do, this opening, so dumb, can't do anything. And if this works for me, who was super bad at the time, and I'm still bad now, but if it works against a FIDE Master / International Master, well, it'll work for you against a 900 rated, I promise you that. Now for black, what systems can you learn? Well, there's a lot of different systems you guys can learn. One of the ones that, in case you guys didn't know, one of my favorite systems as black is the Philidor system. Why do I like the Philidor system? Because first of all, nobody really knows how to play against it, which gives you a plus. But it's not just that. But after after you play these moves, you get very comfortable after a while. Especially if you played this opening maybe 100, maybe 1,000 times. Well, you just do the same thing every game, just attack e4. Where do we put this bishop? Well, e7, so we can castle, so we can put the rook on e8 to attack e4. We're going to put this pawn c6, so we can play pawn b5, which allows us to play pawn b4, kick the knight. Once the knight gets kicked, we can take e4. If that doesn't work, bishop b7, so we can attack e4. Guess where this knight goes in the future? c5, so we can attack e4. Everything just flows together as one. And that's one of the best things you can do, and why systems are still particularly strong. Now, what are some negatives of a system? Well, because they're so simple, if your opponent is well prepared and actually knows what to do against the system, well, they will have a comfortable game. None of these systems are bad by any means, by the way. And in fact, as I said before, like these openings are pretty commonly played at the higher levels too. Sure, the Ruy Lopez's, the Sicilians dominate, but up there, sometimes people like pull the surprise card, like the Philidor. Sometimes they pull the Kali Zucator. Sometimes they play London System, as Magnus Carlsen has been popularizing pretty recently. So, let me show you against an opponent why this can be so extremely strong. Let me play against somebody like an average rated player, like a 1200 rated player. And you might be thinking, well, Sean, you're a national master. Of course you beat this guy. It doesn't matter what you play. You could play pawn h4 and you would win. That's not the point. I'll show you what I mean. Alright, let's see if I can get a game. Now, this isn't 1200, but this is the only game I could find at the moment. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just play pawn d6, and I'm just going to pre-move a couple of moves. Why? Because I'm very comfortable with this position. This person says, I feel like I'm done for already. So in this position, I do have to be scared of my opponent playing here, but... So after knight here, we're going to play pawn e5. Now, technically, pawn c6 is a lot better because it does kick the bishop away, but let's just imagine I'm a beginner player. I just know my system. Alright, so I think to myself, hey, my opponent's trying to take my pawn here, the bishop's pinning the knight, so I better play pawn c6, which is part of our plan, by the way, within this system. It is something that we've already seen, as I mentioned before even going into this game within the Philidor system. So we just play bishop e7, we're going to castle. Do you guys remember what our plan was? Maybe rook e8, bishop f8, b5, b4, a5 maybe, bishop b7, knight c5 in the future. So let's play castles. Very nice. We're getting b5 in. Nothing to worry about. I played this 1,000,000,000 times, and you guys can practice this 1,000,000,000 times, and you guys will be better at this opening. And the reason why this is better than learning, like, for example, Ruy Lopez, is because since you play really the same thing, there's not many variations. Well, if you don't get good at this, well, maybe that's a you problem. So, b5, didn't we mention this before? Are we not going step by step this entire process that we talked about? We won e4. Very good. Congratulations. We're doing good. Is my opponent going to take on b4? I'm b4. These pawns are not good for my opponent to take because it allows like pawn d5, which allows me to take their active pieces everywhere. Also allows me to play rook b8 to attack that. Alright, let's play that rook b8. So we can attack that queen and attack b2. Attacking the queen side is what we do. Alright, so let's see what my opponent does. I mean, if we can win b2, that's pretty good. If we can win the queen, that's even better. Now, once the system goes through, as you guys see, like after 10 moves, well, we haven't lost yet, which is good. We just have to follow this process. But not only that, we have a comfortable middle game. And the more you play this, the more used to it you would get as well. So we can play this. Attack that queen. Maybe he doesn't notice. Maybe he sees this free pawn. Maybe he takes it. Alright, he took it and we just win the queen, which means, well, we get the big advantage, and this shows why the strength of the, well, opening. So, overall, the reason why I wanted to show you this game was not because I wanted to show you me beating up an 800 rated player, that would be kind of, well, rude. But the reason why I wanted to show you this was to show you why systems are important, why you can learn so much from it, and why it can actually help you improve extremely quickly. Alright, I'll see you in the next video. If you guys enjoyed this video, please press like and subscribe. We've been growing so quickly, and I have to thank every single one of you guys once again. Alright, tell me in the comment section below what you want for the next video, and hopefully I will reply extremely quickly. Bye!